The revelation of the Nazis' breeding facilities' dark secrets is enough to give anybody the chills. Science has a sad past that has led to unimaginable atrocities being committed on innocent people. How did these gruesome experiments come to be, and what possessed their creators to go to such extremes of cruelty?
The eerie legacy of Nazi breeding farms is a sobering reminder of the darkest corners of the human soul. Farms were set up with the deliberate intention of developing a master race, the Aryan race, as part of Nazi Germany's larger framework of racial supremacy. The disturbing motivations and goals behind these breeding programs and the development and functioning of the farms, analyses the selection criteria for desirable traits, reveals the inhumane practices and experiments conducted on human subjects, addresses the devastating effects on the victims, and contemplates the legacy and lessons learned from this dark period in history. How was the execution ensured? Mistreatment of human subjects and brutal experiments.
Have a look at these pictures from Nazis' experimentation labs. Imagine for a moment if you were denied one of the most fundamental rights that people have. How would you feel? In Nazi breeding institutions, there were many men and women who were both victims of and witnesses to this atrocity. One of the many cruel practices that the Nazis used in order to preserve their eugenics philosophy was the practices of forcible sterilization. People's reproductive autonomy was limited, and they were left with significant emotional scars as a result of the lack of reproductive alternatives that were available to them. Unsettling experiments in heredity manipulation. In an attempt to regulate and exert control over human genetics, the dictatorship carried out some very disturbing studies on heredity. These operations included the forcible impregnation of women by men who were considered to have desirable racial characteristics. The goal was to produce an allegedly superior Aryan race, because the Nazis were ready to see human beings as objects and break ethical boundaries. Nazi breeding farms were sites of horrifying human experimentation. These experiments rejected all conceptions of human dignity and were carried out in complete disdain for human rights. Mengel's brutal twin experiments. In Nazi breeding facilities, the notorious Dr. Joseph Mengele, sometimes known as the Angel of Death, carried out inhumane experiments on twins. In these sick experiments, twins, usually toddlers, were subjected to gruesome medical treatments without their knowledge or permission. Mengele's fixation with researching twins led him to do unspeakably terrible acts, such as removing organs and manipulating their DNA, that left their innocent victims with permanent physical and mental scars. Moving forward, let's check out in what ways did the dehumanizing experiments carried out at these farms impacted their sense of self. The consequences on victims. Psychological and physical repercussions on the victims were obvious. Those who made it out of Nazi concentration camps' breeding farms suffered severe psychological trauma that has yet to heal. The dehumanizing experiments they had to suffer and the lack of reproductive freedom left a lasting imprint on their mental health. To alleviate their pain, society must show them compassion and empathy despite the stigma that surrounds their experiences. Physical consequences of Nazi breeding farms and their long-term impact on human health was another thing. The physical scars left by the Nazi concentration camps' breeding farms are still with us today. Hormonal imbalances and other health problems are linked to forcible sterilizations. Inadequate medical attention during and after the tests, on top of the physical trauma many participants experienced, has left many with chronic health problems. Assisting survivors requires acknowledging and resolving these long-term health impacts. Transmission of family trauma across generations. The survivors' offspring have likewise been affected by the atrocities of the Nazi breeding facilities. The mental and emotional health of future generations might be affected by the trauma their parents or grandparents endured. In order to promote healing and provide necessary assistance for those impacted, it is essential to recognize and acknowledge this intergenerational trauma. The suffering of the victims of Nazi breeding farms is a powerful reminder of the dark side of human nature. The psychological and physical aftereffects endured by survivors are a testament to their strength in the face of unfathomable anguish and tragedy. We must remember their experiences as we face this dark chapter, using wisdom from the past to create a kinder tomorrow. By bearing witness to their pain and aiding in their recovery, we want to make sure the wounds this period left behind are a somber cry for solidarity, tolerance, and the defense of human dignity across all of society. We would love to know your perspective on these inhumane practices in the comments below. Feel free to share your thoughts with us. Also, do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more such content.